All right, so again, we left off, our driver's got, for lack of better words, almost nothing but errors in it. All right, and we've got the actual payroll class. The payroll class has almost nothing in it. What I want you to understand, all right, so please look up on the screen here, is every time that you come in and you create a new payroll object, a special method is called a constructor. All right, and that constructor can do something. If you don't write one, it writes one for you that it does absolutely nothing. So even every Java program we've created so far has had a constructor, even though you didn't write it. It just doesn't do anything. But you can write your own. Not only that, you can do what's called overload your constructor. So in this case, we want to call a constructor that takes a string, a double, and a double. But in this case, we want to call a constructor that doesn't take in anything. Does that make sense to both of you? All right. So we're going to start writing that now. So go back to your payroll 06 file, and we're going to come in here. And pretty much the way that this is referred to, just so you know, is when you've got a constructor with no arguments in it, all right, it's called a no arg constructor. It's not a term I made up, but that's usually what it's called. So if we've got a constructor, if we want to create a constructor now, which is what we want to do, a constructor again is a special kind of method. But what makes it special, it's the only Java method I know of cannot return anything. And it has to have the same name as the name of the class. Since the class is called payroll 06, the constructor must be called payroll 06. All right, it's telling me one related problem. Okay, and I think it's because we have a constructor that does not take no arguments. Okay, so we'll fix that. In fact, I can even do this underneath here. Now the other one, and this is not a term, I didn't make it up, but I read it someplace. I'm going to call this a full arg constructor. Okay, so this constructor is going to take in a string, and it's going to have a first name. It's going to take in a string, and it's going to have a last name. It's going to take in a double for hours, whatever we did first. I think hours worked, and a double for hourly rate. Okay. Now it's telling me here that I've got this one related problem. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that problem would be, but hopefully we'll fix it. Okay. All right. So this is the constructor that's going to be called for Angie and for Jeff. This is the constructor that's going to be called for Keegan. Does that make sense to both of you? Now, if we wrote another one of these, I'm not going to do that, but let's just say that for Jeff here, let's say that when we did this here, I passed in three things. So just a first name and a last name, and let's say that I had an hour's work, but I didn't have an hourly rate yet. I'd have to make another constructor. So I either have to pass in four things, string, double, double, or nothing. Because those that they have to line up with the constructors that I have. All right, and if it still doesn't make sense, just wait on it for a little bit, okay? So Angie and Jeff, your first name originally is going to be FNU, first name unknown, okay? And the last name for Jeff and for Angie is going to be FNU. I'm sorry, LNU, last name unknown. All right. And sorry, but you didn't work anything, and neither did I. So we're going to set that equal to 0.0. And dot rate, I think it was. We're going to set that equal to 0.0. Okay, so put that in. I'm trying to figure out, this says one related problem, but it's not telling me what it is. Move assignment to field declaration. No, I don't want to do that. So this dot rate equals 0.0. Okay. Now, one thing for you to notice, if you look up on the screen here, we are initializing our class variables in the constructor. That's normally how you do it. We could have literally come in here and set these two to 0 and then not had to put these in there. We could have done that. All right, but I'm not going to. So the other thing is, now don't type what I'm going to put in yet, okay? Okay, so I'm going to put in here this dot first name equals fn, this dot last name equals ln, this dot hw, no, not hw, hours equals hw, this dot rate equals hr. Okay, and that's totally fine. That would work. We can put that in. But I want to show you something, because most of the time, if you write it like this, it's going to sound like a pun, but it's not meant to. In these two examples right here, we don't need the word this in front of any of those. It would work just fine without it. However, quite often what you see, and you can change yours so it looks like this, quite often what you see is what people do is they call this here the same thing that they called it up here. So I'm going to change this to first name. I'm going to change this to last name. I'm going to change this to hours and the last one to rate. Now, if you do that, like we did it here, if we do this, now we must use the word this. Okay, so first, oops. IRST name. Last name. Hours and rate. All right, so in that example that's right there, we must put in the word this. This refers to basically the current object in this case that we're working with. The reason that we need this, let's say we left off the word this. So let's say in this example here, we left off the word this. I don't know if we get an error or not. I don't really care. But what would happen is it would grab this copy that we're passing in, and it would copy that copy to the copy. You see what I'm saying? This is saying grab what we passed in. So what is that? This is Keegan. Keegan right there is that. Does that make sense? All right. Young right there is that. And I think we use like 50 and 60 or something. So that's 50 and that's 60. Does that all make sense? All right. But this, if they have the same name like this and you don't use the word this, it doesn't know to copy them to the class variables. So it just makes a copy of them themselves. It makes a copy of the arguments that you're passing in. Now, the reason that you don't need the word this in here is we don't have the same name on the right-hand side of the equal sign. See that? So we could have just said first name equal FNU, last name, etc. We could have done that. Now, let's go back to here. Doesn't look like it's solved very much. It still doesn't like print line, and I'm still not sure what the problem with that is, but we'll see if we can fix that in just a bit. Okay. Oh, in fact, I know what it is. We'll have to fix that one later. But the point is, this line before, you may or may not agree, but that line was an error before. That was an error line. It didn't understand that one. And it didn't understand this one. It may or may not have made errors with that one and this one, but now those aren't errors. All right. The reason we're getting those error messages that you see for the print lines, we have to tell it how to do a print line. Why? Because we're not printing variables, we're printing objects. We're going to print an entire Keegan object, an entire Angie object, and an entire Jeff object. So the system needs to know basically, what the heck are you even trying to do? All right. So This is totally fine the way we have it. The only problem is, I'm asking you this question. What do you think is going to happen if in here I put a negative number here and don't put a negative number there? What do you think is going to happen? It's not going to give you an error. Just telling you that right now. But what do you think is going to happen? Yeah, it's going to say that you owe $3,500, which I don't think you'd like. All right. So what we can do, I'm going to show you two ways that we can fix this. All right. The first way is we can come in here and we can go back to our actual file. And I just want you to comment these out. And the reason I'm having you do all this stuff, I'm not trying to waste my time or your time, but I'm showing you there's a lot of different ways of doing the same kind of thing. This is doing absolutely no input validation. All right. So we could pass in negative numbers. You could pass in nothing for the name. So we could pass in double quote, and that would put that in there for your name. We don't want that. So the way that we would fix that, there's two different ways you can fix it. I'm going to show you both. All right, so the first way is we could come in here and we could say this dot first name equals, and I'm going to put in here, and just bear with me. So let me put the whole thing in here. Just one here. And one there. Okay. Question mark. We'll fix this in a minute. Don't worry about that error. Colon FNU. That should be first name. Now I'm going to put, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all four of these in here, then we'll go back and talk about each one of them. All right? So I'm going to put all four of them in, then we'll go back and we'll talk about each. So I'm just going to copy, I'm going to have to make changes. So this becomes last. This becomes last. That becomes LNU. This becomes hours. This becomes rate. Let's get rid of this completely. Say hours less than min hours, or hours greater than, oops, max hours, not age, hours. All right, if that's the case, question mark, hours, colon 0.0. And we'll do a similar thing right here. Like I said, we're going to talk about this in a bit. Rate less than min rate. Or, come on, stop it. Rate greater than max rate. Question mark rate. Colon 0.0. All right, so this is the second way. Now we've done some validation. You'll notice there's no errors in here. All right, and I'm going to, in just a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out, and then we're going to do it a third way. All right. Let me know when you both got this done. You're done? Okay. Okay. Now, this is that question mark colon operator. So what this is saying is if the first name we passed in was not blank, if it was not blank, then accept it. Okay? But if it was blank, set it to FNU. Okay? This does the same thing with the last name, but to LNU. This says if the hours that we entered was less than 0 or greater than 84, sorry, if it was less than this, and actually this is backwards. I should either flip that and put the 0 first or make this greater than or equal to. If it's greater than or equal to min hours and, sorry, Keegan, please change yours, and it's less than or equal to min hours. Okay, and this one will be the same thing then. My error. There, that is now correct. So the third one there with hours says that if the hours is between 0 and 84, accept it. Otherwise, just set it to 0. We're not doing try-catch in here or anything like that, although Java has a try-catch. All right? And then we're doing the same thing with the rate. Now, I didn't mean to confuse you. All right? Now, I'm going to write some stuff. Don't write this because I'm going to show you how you can automatically put it in. All right? And I think that's much nicer myself. So I'm going to copy these, just those 2 lines. When you work with Java and you work with classes, you work, and I may have told you this term already, we may have sort of even done it a little bit in the C# class, but you work with what are called getters and setters. All right? So what I want to do for each one of these, there'll be 8 total routines. I could have you type them in, but they'll literally be written for you almost totally automatically. All right, so I'm going to write the first one just to show you what it's going to look like. All right, so I'm going to put in here first name. This will just say first name getter. And then underneath that, I'll put in the first name setter. All right, I'm going to remove this. So you don't have to put it in. I'm going to remove it in just a minute. So with this getter, I'm going to say public. I don't think I need static in here. Let's see, I'll double check. Nope. Public string, and I'm going to call it get first name. All right. And all I'm going to put in here is return first name. That's it. That's the whole routine. That's everything. That means that anytime I request the first name, it's going to bring it back to me. So in this first name right here, that one, this blue, that is this right here. And then for the setter, setters almost always are a void, but almost always they're going to have a value passed in. All right, we'll put in here string first name. All right, and we'll put in here this dot first name equals FN. All right, I'm still not sure why I'm getting these related problems, but hopefully they're going to iron themselves out. What I'm trying to tell you, show you, is this, that when you do a getter, all right, all you're doing is you're returning something. It's first day of class. You've heard this before. It's first day of class. I've never met you before. You walk in, you say, good morning. I say, good morning. What's your name? You say, Angie. That's getting your last name. Now, you know this. You may or may not. But I've got a Gabriel who sits here in the morning and a Gabriel who sits over there. If I decided that was too tough, and they both do look up when I say Gabriel. They always do. So I usually say Gabriel W or Gabriel B. But let's just say I said, no, Gabriel, you're Gabe from now on. That's a set. Does that make sense? And that shouldn't have been first, not last. Okay? But you understand what's going on with both of these. So, like I said, that's too much work. So I'm going to get rid of those. And this is going to be interesting. It'll take me a minute to remember because I was working in Android Studio and I know how to do it there, but I don't remember how to do it here. So we'll find it. I think it's under code. So I'm going to go to code here. And if I go down, there should be a generate getters and setters in here someplace. Delegate override implement code completion. No. Comment, reformat, auto indent, move up.
I found it. It's you have to click on generate at the top.
All right. All right, so click on generate. And we want getters. And it says, what do you want a getter for? All right, we want a getter for, something tells me this is still wrong, but that's fine. We're going to do it like this anyway and see if it works. We'll do it for the first, for the first name, for the last name, for the hours, and for the rate. See those four? And I'm going to click OK. You'll know real fast whether or not this was the correct way to do this. And it looks like it was. See that? I'd rather do it that way myself. And anytime the system will do something for me, you know, I'm looking at it that it's probably more tried and tested than if I did it myself. Now, Keegan was good enough to mention that, and I appreciate it. Now I'm going to go down, and I'm going to again click code and generate. This time I'm going to choose setter. And we could have done it this way. See this? We could have chosen getter and setter. So you can do it any of these ways. But I'm going to choose setter this time. And this time I'm going to again choose just first name, last name, hours, and rate. We don't want to get, have a getters and setters for the for most of the rest of it. Okay? All right. So there's that. Now there's that. Now again, it's telling me one related problem. I don't know what the problem is. And I'm going to go back to here. Still give me a boatload of problems here, and I think we're going to fix that one next. So I'm not sure. I wish somehow it told me what this related problem was. All right. But the point is, we auto-generated those. And I should be able to do this now. So I'm literally, you don't have to do this. I'm going to remove everything we just put in. Whoops, wrong button. I'm going to just remove it all. You don't have to, just because I'm going to add it right back again. But I'm going to delete all of it. There it's gone. I'm going to go here. And again, I will click code and generate. This time I'll choose getter and setter. All right, just so you see that. And we'll do I don't want to do it in that order. So we will do first name, last name, hours, and rate. So there's all of them. That should have made 8 different routines. Get, set first name, get, set last name, get, set hours, get, set rate. Some people, when they code, they like to put all their getters first, then their setters. Some like to put the get and the set for the same piece of data, so you can do it either way. I did want to do it like that to show you there's 2 ways of doing it. Which way should you use? You should use whatever way is the easiest for you to understand it. It really and truly does not matter.
How do you click multiple stuff like that?
I went in and I did the code and the generate, and I chose getter and setter right here. And then I just chose the ones I wanted, which again were, it's not going to show these, it's not going to show them now because I've already chosen them.
No, I
So,
mean, like, how'd you select multiple at one time instead of having to go in and add them one by one?
yeah, just hold on, click on the first one you want, then hold on your shift key and click the rest. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go back up here, and I mentioned to you that this is fine. Okay? These are fine. And what we can do instead of this, if we want to, now we've got setters and getters. So what can I do here? I'm going to comment these lines out. Please look up on the screen here. These 4 that we just put in, I'm going to comment them out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. See what I did there, Keegan? I'm commenting out these 4 that we just put into that full arc constructor. All right. I'm going to comment them out. And now instead, I'm going to call set first name. And I'm going to pass in the first name that was provided for us. Then I'm going to call set last name. And I'm going to provide for that the last name. And then I'm going to call set hours. Hours. And I'm going to pass in the hours. And finally, you can probably guess what's last. Set rate. And I'm going to pass in the rate. All right. Now, look on the screen, please. This is the most important part. I still want to take this logic that's in here, and I want to put it now in these set routines. Do you understand what I'm saying? Look on the screen. So I'm going to grab this line of code right here, basically, just this line, and I'm going to copy that, and that's going to go in here. Because right now I'm doing no validation. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to grab this line. I don't need the comment symbol. And instead of what I have in here for set first name, this dot first name equal first name, I'm going to put in that. All right, then I'm going to come to the last name, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab, oops, somehow I lost the word this in there. I'm going to grab the stuff for the last name, and I'm going to put that here. Then I'm going to grab the stuff for the hours, and I'm going to put that here. And finally, I don't need all those spaces now. Finally, I'm going to grab the stuff for the rate, and I'm going to put that here. Now, I'm asking you just a basic overall question. Does what we're doing there make sense? So again, I don't know you, Keegan. What's your name? You say Keegan. That's getting your first name. I say, I'm sorry, we've already got 3 Keegans in this class. What's your middle name? And you say Thomas. And I say, from now on, I'm going to call you KT or something like that. That's a set. So when you've got a get, when you look on the screen here, when you've got a get, you don't pass anything in, but you're returning that class variable. So you need to put a return type in there. You don't have to do any kind of logic. It's just return followed by that. When you do a set, you're virtually always passing something in. And it's going to be a copy of what you want to set that value to. And again, almost 100% of the time, if not 100, it returns nothing, so the type is void. The reason I'm showing you this, remember how these look to begin with when it just said like this dot first name equal first name? Most Java books, when they show you this, they don't show you any kind of validation. So now we have validation. All right? And so I've shown you 3 ways that we could do this in our full arc constructor. All right, and guess what? Now in this constructor, if we wanted to, we could grab these same lines that are right here, these lines. All right. No, I guess we'd have to write another one. So let's see. Could we call set first name? No, we're not passing anything. So yeah, we could. We could come in here and do this. I'm going to just take these 4 lines for now and comment them out. Comment, 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 comment. All right, and I'm going to say set first name, and I'm going to pass into that FNU. Then I'm going to call set last name, and I'm going to pass into that LNU. And I'm going to call set hours, and I'm going to pass into that 0 or 0.0. It really and truly does not matter. And finally, I'm going to call set rate. Like that. Now, you might say, okay, I even get what you're saying. Who the hell cares? Imagine that rather than 4 variables in here, we had 20 or 30. all right? This is a lot of stuff to be putting into here, and we're doing the exact same thing in here. So we're not replicating code. We're calling an already written routine to handle that code for us. Does that make sense to you? And we're always passing something in, and we know it's valid. So when we come down to any one of these, it's always going to be setting whatever we passed in. We set in FNU, but for some reason, this is just some extra checks. If somehow this ever got called and something wasn't passed into it, now we're covered. And now if we do come back in here and we pass in negative 55, it's not going to accept that. It's going to change it to 0, all right? But we also could have gone in and we could have checked and said if it was less than 0, we could have called the absolute value property to remove the negative sign from it. We could have done that too. So there's a lot of different stuff that if we wanted to, we could do in here. All right, so there's a couple more things that we're going to do. So we've now got our getters and our setters set up, okay? Now, this is going to look a little weird because we're going to write one more getter, and we're going to write a getter for the gross pay. So you might say, why didn't we just do that getter up above when we did the rest of those? We could have done that. But when you do, would you agree with this? This program is figuring out gross pay. Would you agree with that? That's what it's doing. We want to make sure that our gross pay is always correct. Would you agree with that? Okay. So what we're going to end up doing to figure out the gross pay is we're going to call get hours and multiply it by get rate, because it's always going to be able to give us the most up-to-date value for hours and the most up-to-date value for rate. Does that make sense? Now, with our hours and rate in here, this we have checked. Would you agree with that? And, it's either going to be nothing or it's going to be valid. We're going to assume that with most of this, what we would have is we would have somebody, some data entry person would have given us a file, and he or she would have typed in valid values for these. If they don't, and everybody starts getting 0, they're going to know something's wrong, right? Okay, but otherwise it's going to handle it just fine. So I'm going to come down here. So again, I've got my get, my set, my get, my set, my get, my set, my get, my set, okay? And like I said, you want it the other way, then do your getters first and then do your setters. I wanted to show you, and it'll work just like that too when we're in Android Studio, just so you know. It'll look a little different the way you get there, but it's basically, it works 100% the same way to my knowledge. So I'm going to now come in here and say public. All right, double get gross pay. Okay. And guess what? I still have to check to see if the person worked overtime, etc. So some of the logic that we had in before is going to be the same. Does that make sense to you? All right. There's not much. There's only 6 or 7 lines we have to copy. So we could have copied some of it over almost, but we still have to make changes to it. So let's just do it like this. So if get hours, see what we're doing now? If it's less than max non-OT. We're not saying hours, we're telling it to get hours. This is the advantage that you get from writing object-oriented programming. It's always going out and grabbing the most up-to-date copy of your class variables. All right, and you might say, well, isn't it always doing that anyway? It might or it might not, depending upon how your code is written. This will always do it. What you don't want to get in a program, the reason this is a get routine, notice it's not a set, it's a get, all right, is what you don't want in an object-oriented program is what's referred to as stale data. You don't want something that's been changed and the change isn't reflected. The old kind of tried and true example of this is, for example, if I go and I get paid, and let's just say I don't have direct deposit. I know most people do, I do, but let's say I don't. And I want to make sure that if I take my check, and let's say it's for $1,000, I want to make sure that when I put it in there, I can immediately start drawing from that. I want to make sure it's got my most up-to-date balance. Because let's say that I only had $500, now I got 15, and I want to write $700 worth of checks. Otherwise, I'm going to be in trouble. All right, so if it's less than that, all right, then pretty simple. Gross equals, just like we had before, hours times rate. Okay, no change there. Else, whoops, what the heck happened there? Else, gross, and this is where it's going to start looking a little bit easier to understand. Get rate times max non-OT. Oops, max non-OT. OT plus get hours minus max non-OT times get rate times, oops, get rate times OT rate. Now, it looks like I got a problem here with my parentheses. I'm going to fix it right now. So this should have had a paren there. I think there should be one there. So get rate, max non-OT rate, two of them here. Get hours minus this in a paren times get rate, and two of them there. And a semicolon, and boom. All right. Now, I'm still getting an error because I'm not returning it. But now I've got a gross to return. Would you agree? Return gross. Oops, not there. All right. There's one more thing that we have to write. Is it long? It's about 8 or 9 lines. All right. Then we're going to see if we can fix whatever these related problems are in here. I don't know what they are. All right. This is, I will tell you that this is different than when I did it a year ago. IntelliJ has changed. My logic has not changed. You know, and the logic is correct. So if there's something wrong in here, it's because something changed with IntelliJ, and I don't know what it is. Now, we're going to write our own two-string method. What the hell is a two-string method? Look on the screen, please. That's what's called whenever you call print line. All right. Notice what we're passing, an entire object. So we have to tell it to print the first name and the last name and the hours and the rate. And if we want the gross pay. Does that all make sense? All right. So come in here, public string, and it's always called toString, and it's always capitalized the way that it's shown right there. All right, so I'm going to do this string. I'm going to call it output str, and it equals first name. You maybe have figured this out already. You maybe have not. I don't know. Plus, what are we calling? Get first name. All right. And I'm just going to keep adding to this string. So output str plus equals, now I'm going to put last name. Oops, what the heck? Plus get last name. Then again, output str plus equals hourly rate. Looks like it's off by a little bit, but that's fine. I can see if I can get that. Well, that might work, might not. Now, I can just do this. Look on the screen. If you're still typing, stop for a second. I can do this, but it's not formatted. So I can come in here and I can say pattern2.format, and I can call that routine. I don't remember what I did first, the rate or the hours. I think I did the hours first. So I'm gonna put this in here twice. If you say I don't know what you're doing, you will in a second. So this will be hours worked. All right, and this will be pattern. I think we want pattern 1 in there for, no, we want pattern 1 for the other one. So this will be get hours, and this will become pattern 1, and this will be get rate. We want the dollar sign in there. That's the only difference between those two. All right, and we're still not done because we got to put in their gross. So output str plus equals gross pay and that will be pattern 1 because we want the dollar sign dot format get gross pay. Now, the good news is there's no errors that I can see in here except we have to return our output string. We're doing all this stuff with output string, but we better return it. So return output str. Now, to my knowledge, if you look in here, there's no errors. See that? There's some yellow, meaning that it doesn't like the way that I did everything. Okay, but, and let's look in here. It still says one related problem. I don't know what that is. We'll see if we can fix that in a minute. But I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to go to the driver. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out now why this isn't being shown, because I would have thought that what I just did would have fixed it. So you don't have to do this, but I'm going to. Oh, you know what the problem is? What don't I have in here? I don't have a main. Remember that? So PSVM, not OSVM, PSVM tab, and I've got to put all this stuff inside of main. Control X to move it. Oops. Control V to put it in. Look, nothing is underlined. See that? Lovely. Sorry about that. See what I did? All right, now let's take it for a ride. So save all. I'm going to come in and run it. It's going to show down here. Well, notice I put in the, instead of calling get last name, I called get first name. See that? That's why it's Angie, Jeff, and Keegan. All right, but everything worked. You even got your overtime. All right, and we went in and changed Angie, so now got the wrong last name, but it's got her first name and it's got her hours and it's got it for me. Do you see all that? All right, so I'm going to change the mistakes that I made. So let's see. Last name, get last name. So why didn't it give me that? So let's go look at get last name. Set last name, get last name, return last name. Okay. Then let's go into here. Let's go into the driver. Set last name, set last name. Oh, looks correct. So why is it giving me that twice? First name, last name. Set first name, set last name, get last name, set last name. Oh, look, right here. See this? That should be last name. That's at least one of them. I'm not saying that's the only problem, but that's one of the problems. That was in the set last name. That should be last name and not first name that we had in there before. That's probably, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that's the only problem, so I'm going to check. FNU, LNU, see that? Keegan, Young, Okay, I'd have to play with its spacing a little bit, but okay. And I kind of like doing it like this because I rewrite this as I'm doing it, and I like making mistakes because they're the mistakes you're going to make. We all make them. All right. Questions on this? Do you understand what's going on in here? That's the most important thing.
But on the public static void main,
Yes.
I made a mistake on typing that into the parentheses, then the array.
So
Okay, no, string goes outside.
I wouldn't have had all these errors that you saw at the beginning. I would have had some of them, but all those system.out.printlines lines would have worked from the beginning if I'd have just put it inside of main. Okay. Again, questions on this? All right, then let's, even though it's I don't know what we are time-wise, but we're going to take another break. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you work on one of these, and I'm going to give you some time to work on it yourself. All right, we're basically going to rewrite the BMI one, but we're going to write this in the same way we wrote this one. So in other words, I'm going to want you to have a set first name, a get first name, a set last name, a get last name, a set height, and a get height, a set weight and a get weight, and then a get BMI. Does all that make sense? Now, you might say, oh, good, I'm just going to take this one and make some. I'd rather have you do it from scratch because that way, that's what you're doing. You see what I'm saying? Does that all make sense? So I'm going to see, because I had assigned this actually as an assignment a year ago, but I'm going to see if I can find my requirements during the break. And if I can, I'm going to give that to you. All right, and then you get the rest of the period to work on it today, and we'll look at that first thing on Monday. Does all that make sense? Okay. Is what we're doing making sense? Is there anything? I mean, it's different. This was different from anything we've done. All right, and before I came here, when I was still working at Blackhawk, all right, I had no desire to be at Blackhawk any longer. There were a lot of political things that were going on there that I didn't like. They got a new president. I thought he was an ass, and there's a few other things. The point is this: we had a meeting every year up in northern Wisconsin where the Wisconsin Technical College system from all through the state got together. Okay, and we met. And while we were there, one of the people who was there is a young woman. Her name was Mary something. I can't remember her last name now. But she said, hey, if any of you are looking to get out of the school you're at and you want to go to Milwaukee Area Technical College, we got an opening. So I thought, it's in downtown Milwaukee, and that's really not the best area. It's not the worst area. And where the campus is, it's actually pretty nice in there. It's a real pain in the butt to get around. It's kind of like downtown St. Louis. But so I interviewed. All right. So why am I telling you all this? Well, I had to do a dog and pony show where I had to talk, and it was on Java. Then when I got done, they actually had my questions. It was the first time I ever did an interview where they had every question was right on the table. It was on a piece of paper, and it was nice because it really took away a lot of the, I don't know, nervousness or whatever, because I knew what they were going to ask. But one of the first questions they asked is, okay, you seem to understand object-oriented programming. Why? Why should you even use it? And you know what? I couldn't even give a great answer. Because everything you do in object-oriented programming, you can do in non-object-oriented programming languages. But the idea of doing it this way is it supposedly is totally I don't know what the word is, everything off. So you've got your gets and you've got your sets. And the idea is, for lack of better words, it almost forces you, by using objects, it forces you to think about, okay, what do I have to worry about for validation, etc. Like I said, I don't know if that makes sense or not. All right. So what we will do on Monday is, the first thing, we're going to go in and we're going to look at we're going to look at what I'm asking you to do now with BMI. And the second thing, and we'll do one or both of these depending on the amount of time. We'll go back basically, and I'll show you kind of quickly, but I'll show you what inheritance is. And instead of having just an hourly employee, we'll have 3 or 4 different kinds of employees. See what I'm saying? And then you'll get into that as well. So take a break. I'm going to go during the break here. I'm going to go and see if I can find those requirements for the BMI program. All right. Yeah, I think a couple of the students this morning, I mean, the guy with the Mac was having problems. Gee, there was a surprise, and he even told me, he said, and I didn't know this. I mean, because she didn't get very far. She normally sat there and didn't do much. Well, she did everything except work. But he said it wasn't showing a form when we were doing GUIs. Well, that's pretty important. So I said, well, we'll look at it together on Monday. I want to see, he was able to download it. And to my knowledge, I'm not saying he did something wrong. I don't know, but he should have one. I don't know what the problem was. So, but he even said that there's not much he could do. He said, I'm following along, but he said to me, can you send me a copy of what we worked on? They didn't turn it in. It was just for practice. And then the other guy, like I told you, there were two of the new guys. That's Adam over there and Connor, I think it was. Adam said he's the one who lost everything like you did. He's like, so he kept watching and he was attentive. He asked questions and stuff, but he's like, I don't know what the heck happened. So I just sent him a copy too. I said, it's fine. But again, I always give that, it's not a great analogy, but it's the one I always give. It's like, I've had that happen. My car was making noises once and I took it over to the mechanic. Of course it wouldn't make the noise. And I'm like, it sounds like this. And he's like, okay, that's a human being trying to make a noise a car is making. I have no idea what the hell that noise is. You know what I'm saying? Because he wasn't there when it was making the noise. Like I wasn't there when that happened to him. What happened to yours? I wasn't there when that happened. But if you did happen to hit two keys together, whatever, it might be a glitch in the software that they don't even know about. I've told this before. I still remember my brother used to be a comptroller for an air filter corporation. And they got a new operating system at work. And they had this manual that was like this thick. He showed it to me. It was called the PIC operating. I never even heard of it before. But they had it right up above the machine of the woman who did data entry. So she was bringing it down one day and dropped it. And it hit on the keyboard. Nothing got ruined. But she didn't realize she removed about a dozen of their customers. And they found it out the next day when they were going in. Now, luckily, they back stuff up every day. So they were able to bring that back, but they lost like a day's worth of stuff for those people, and it's like, he always calls me with computer questions. Like, I know, but he's like, what do you think happened? I think she hit some key combination that they didn't plan on, and it just removed records. I don't know. I said, he goes, well, I wasn't there when it happened either. So I said, so now it's like third hand. I'm getting it. You said that somebody said, and I'm supposed to tell you what the problem was. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I don't know. I guess